Yeah, hi everybody. That's a lot of pressure now. So just lower your expectations on this a little bit. So I'm Tony, and I kind of lead the mobile efforts here for Adobe in EMEA. And can you hear me well? Does this work? Yeah. So I'll just get right into it. The digital economy, this elusive thing everybody talks about, and companies gets sort of disrupted and they don't do so well, and some ends up doing a little bit better. And I wanted to talk to you about today what they have in common and what role mobile plays in all of this. All right? And since I'm Swedish, that's where the weird accent comes from. You might know of these two companies. Yeah? Has anyone here been inside? I think you've been inside a Volvo car, most of you. But does anyone not know what Minecraft is? Yeah, come on. Somebody must not know what it is. All right, it's like Lego, but in a virtual world. And the reason why I wanted to show these two companies here is that the new digital economy has changed the rules completely. Yeah? Old truths don't apply anymore. And I think this is a great consequence of the digital economy. And I'm just going to flip this through here. So you see Minecraft, it was sold just 2 years ago to Microsoft. 40 employees, $2.5 billion. And then you have Volvo, it's founded in 1924. I'm going to get back to that in a second. But founded in an old age, I would say, pre-digital. And I'm going to make a little bit of an argument here that, one of the reasons why most of these companies, and actually some of the ones you're with today, are facing disruption and are not doing so well in the new digital economy, where the old rules don't apply anymore. And I love that, 1.8 billion, and 20,000 employees, that's ridiculous. So, how do we get here? This is not a history lesson here, but do you recognize who these gentlemen are? Anyone? The guy on the left is Newton, and the one in the middle is called Descartes, philosopher, And the guy on the far right side here is called Frederick Taylor, also known as the first management consultant in the world. He came up with this scientific... he's all about efficiency and that you should break down people's, companies and tasks into really, really clear, job descriptions and such. And they kind of coined, this is like 200 years ago, the clockwork universe. You've heard of that, where everything was very predictable and very linear. Yeah? And many companies, they originated from this age when the world was very predictable and safe, and you didn't really have to change things so often. Once every 20, 30 years, that was enough. Very, very predictable. But, the world, actually today, I would say, looks more like this. Complete chaos, and mobile is in the middle of all of this. The Internet of Things, the Internet of everyone, who is connected to each other and to all devices, usually on a mobile device. So it's in the center of all of this, and it's created this chaos. And the question is, if you're a company today, if you're a brand, how do you make sense of all of this, and how do you adapt to this? How do you respond to digital disruption? And to me, two things. If we have to focus on something here, I would say one is about designing experiences that matters to your customers, that are relevant and timely, and makes your customers feel something. Possibly also making a transaction a little bit easier for them. That's really important to do on a mobile device. And the second part, to be able to do the first thing, you really need to, and heard it from Coca-Cola earlier, that you really need to design your organization in a way so you're set up to deliver the first thing. And how do you do that? So I'm going to try to explain that to you. But before we do that, and I think you saw this slide, thank you, Mark, earlier today, but it's about technology adoption. And, back, in the 100 years ago or so, when electricity and the stove and the car was introduced, it took about 75 years to reach about 90–100% adoption. That's a lot of time for a brand or a company to respond to this. It's not very fast. right? And then, when I was born in 1976, I grew up with these things, except the dishwasher, but PCs and the internet. And adoption there took about 15, 20 years, a little bit faster. And then at the, most recently, or with the introduction of the smartphone and the tablet, just a few years before it reached 100% adoption. And that's sort of putting a lot of pressure onto companies to respond to these type of things. And if you look at I love this one. So like a few years ago, when I was at the university, I built those things. And it was a PC, obviously, with a clunky CRT screen and a keyboard and a mouse. And, it weighed, 20 kilos or so. And then you have the mobile phone here, the truly first personal computer, I would say. 600 times faster than that state-of-the-art machine 20 years ago. 600 times faster. You can carry it with you everywhere you go. Has GPS, you can do payments, you can do anything on them, and it's super personal. And combined with that, you also have now insanely fast internet speeds on these phones. So 4G allows you to download about 20 megabytes of data per second. That's 4G. And do you know how much it's going to be in 4 years from now when 5G gets introduced? Anyone? Yeah, it's a lot more. It's 1,000 megabytes per second. That's just around the corner. So that's going to put, it kind of increases the expectations on what type of content you get onto your device. And you need to be there all the time. We talked about content velocity earlier. And that's going to be delivered onto these super personal devices. And I love I think this one is kind of nice. Down here you have the first, this is the relative screen sizes of mobile devices. And down here in the corner you have the first phone that came out, and up there, it's not entirely updated, but that's a modern phone over there, a modern smartphone. And what this says to me is that this is the first meaningful interface to the digital world that we're getting on these mobile devices now. Massively important. And all of these things sort of create this perfect storm for a new behavior, even a new generation to take place. And at Google, when I was there, we used to call it the Generation C. Have you heard of it, the connected generation? It's not about age, it's not about millennials, it's all of us. Everybody who has these phones tend to adopt the behaviors that these millennials, younger people, do. They're constantly on the device and they spend a lot of time on them, and they do everyday things. Massively important for them to be able to do that, like easily and getting meaningful content and so on. And if you look at it in terms of numbers, trying to quantify what this generation is doing, 60% of the content being consumed on these devices, 300 billion apps downloaded by the end of the year. And there are 3.1 million new apps since this July. 3.1, sorry. And billions of smartphones. And I think this one is kind of interesting as well, just to look at the amount of time people spend on different devices. This is in the US to the left, and then you have the UK here on the right. And just check out what has happened since 2011. In the US, 40 minutes on a mobile device and the online desktop, 2 hours and 33 minutes. And just a few years later, look, 2.22 hours for desktop and almost 3 hours on a mobile device. That's insane. So mobile has overtaken desktop in many ways, and that's what's growing. And if you look at desktop and the amount of time people spend on that has kind of stagnated a little bit. And same thing in the UK. Mobile just in 2015 has overtaken desktop. But most of you, is there anyone here who operates like globally, any brand globally? Not just locally, right? Yeah. So Asia is kind of important maybe for growth. So I decided to include that one as well. And if you look there, if you look at all the way to the right here, you see that mobile is completely dominating there. It's not mobile first, it's not mobile ready, it's mobile only. Yeah, so if you want to grow there and deal with customers over there, it should be mobile only. And one of those, I think a great piece of advice here from a hockey player who is encouraging brands to sort of, I think you should do more of this. So you skate to where the puck is going to be. and not to where it's been. So do mobile. And one of these companies that have done this in Asia, in China, is called GoGo Van. Doesn't ring a bell, right? I hope not. I hope you've never heard of it. This is a brand this is a piece of their advertisement here. You can see the size of the phone is bigger than the actual product. It's a logistics company that ships stuff. And the mobile phone is bigger, and this one is in China, it's in Shanghai and Hong Kong and Seoul and so on. And move your stuff with only one hand. And I think that's a pretty compelling thing. And they don't have a website where you can do this. You can't ship on their website, only on the mobile device. And I thought I would show you what the experience looks like here, if you download their app. And, and this is an actual journey to actually book a shipment here with them. You can see 3 easy steps. It's a super clean interface, right? And you click on from, and if you do, the phone will know where you are. That's logical, right? It's GPS and it knows where you are. That's great. So you can pre-populate that, and then you select the destination, Kennedy Town in Hong Kong. You can see the price right there. Very simple. It just comes up there automatically. The next step is, I've selected a van and 2 passengers, and you can also order, an English-speaking driver in Hong Kong, which might be good. So you see the total price there, and in the end, it's the final step here. You review your order, and then you find the driver, like Uber almost. And 1,400 drivers waiting to pick up your package. And if you looked at the time up there, it said 15:58 when I started to do this, to order this shipment here. It took about a minute to do this, and it's super smooth. And the Coca-Cola guy, he mentioned these guys. And this is supposed to be the company that does these type of shipments in an express way. They even have express in their name. So we're going to check out their experience. I'm not going to mention so much here, but this is what it looks like if you're trying to do it there. Yeah. And again, the Coca-Cola guy, David was his name, he said, how come companies, why are they having this? Check it out. So another screen. And this is sort of nice, and you're still in the app. But then, you get an instruction of how to use the app. And if you have that, if your company does this, I think you've done something wrong. It shouldn't be needed, right? And loading. And check this out. On this page, you're being directed to a website. You see, it's not happening in the app. And it's loading, and then, check it out. Cookies. This is the experience. This is a real experience. Yeah, so, scrolling down, and here you have to select what type of package you want. Here's the pricing screen, the overview, so you can understand how much you're going to pay for it. It just goes on and on. I'm not going to bore you with this, but it takes about 10 minutes to create this type of shipment, and it's really, really horrible. And that's why these GoGo, so GoGo Van is completely dominating in these areas. And especially, you see in this slide too, but GoGo Van is eating away FedEx's, what they should be famous for, fast shipments, right? Completely eating away their business there in Asia, where they're supposed to grow by insane amounts. And the reason why I think I wanted to keep this example from logistics is that you typically don't think of that as an industry that's facing disruption in digital. But they're not alone. Like you saw on the other slide, there are so many other companies doing fast shipment mobile only. They don't have a website where you can go in there and punch in your shipments and do stuff. It's just really great. And the cool thing is that there are so many other parts of their business that's being eaten away here by these mobile only companies. And English people, since I'm Swedish, you have a kind of a thing for American or English expressions, and this is death by 1,000 cuts. I love that expression. So I hope nobody's here from FedEx, but you're great company. Yeah, lovely. Yeah. So what do those guys have in common? And there's a guy here called Tom Goodwin who wrote a great article on TechCrunch trying to identify what these guys have in common, these smaller agile startups. And check this out. They're founded in a an economy, in this new digital economy where old rules don't apply. They've completely ignored what made companies like FedEx successful, which is amazing. I think that's really great and powerful. So yeah, and they're not fueled by the same assets and knowledge and the learned behaviors that these old big companies, what once made them successful. And the question is, do these large companies like FedEx have something in common as well? So I'm not sure if you agree with me on this one. But yeah, it's kind of common that you have something that looks like this. And I hope you're down here, because I sympathize with you. I hope you're down here. But there is hope, there's hope. So what I'm trying to say here is that in the old age, 200 years ago, when companies like Volvo was founded and FedEx, when the world sort of was perceived as this clockwork universe where everything was linear and predictable and efficiency was the only thing. That type of structure, this top-down command structure, made sense. People were like machines. And I think that's the point here. Many companies still operate this way, and that's not really good. So instead, when the world looks like that, don't do any of this. You should maybe try to design your organization in a way so you're capable of creating experiences in that chaos. And that means that you need to have an agile organization, not some boss or some manager who micromanages you, and you should be more agile. And this is a great example of how to do that. You don't really need any managers anymore. If you're lucky, if you've ever worked in such an organization, I've been lucky to have that, kind of here as well, I have to say. But if you have ever experienced this, and there's a fancy term for this. It's called sustained organizational adaptability. It's a really fancy term, but what they're characterized by is this is the sort of thing you start to feel in those organizations. Purpose-driven, it's fun, it's collaborative, very transparent and open, and completely flat. And that is very powerful if you want to do digital, if you want to succeed in this space. And like the Coca-Cola guy showed, this is possible if you're a big brand. And if you want to read some more about that, here are some reading tips for you. And I love that one here at the, so I'm a manager myself, I think. But this one is, I can say this, but read this article, it's really good. And it doesn't really mean to fire everybody, but it's about how you create environments where creativity and agility can thrive. So back to the digital economy now. Does this matter? Does it have any, if you have an organization that's set up this way, if you do mobile, if you invest in it, will it have any impact on things like profit and margins and revenue? And this is Capgemini and MIT. They try to look at about 400 companies on how they performed over time in multiple markets. And it turns out that those that are so-called digital masters, they have a leadership team who acts and encourages their teams to be more flat and agile. And plus, on the y-axis there, they encourage their teams to actually do digital, to experiment and have fun. Prototyping, failing, and encouraging that. Look at that. And this is, I think, amazing. You see a huge impact on things that most higher ups in an organization tend to care about. So digital is good. Keep it flat and do mobile. And the last slide I wanted to sort of bring up here with you, kind of to illustrate this process, is that new trends kind of emerge down here. And that's mobile in this case. And what happens after that is that you see all these innovative, really cool startups starting to capitalize on it, building these experiences. And then early adopters come. That's people like you here, probably in the audience, who cares about mobile. And then hopefully there are some of these advanced old big companies like Coke. It's a great company, but they learn from this and they try to be there as well. And then the mainstream customers adopt. That's when the tipping point occurs. And two things typically happen there. Either you get disrupted, or you sort of do what Coke has done here, try to cope with all these changes. And if you map on the Capgemini study, it's going to look pretty much like this. that I think, the beginners are facing kind of a problem here, and then fashionistas and conservatives are going to do, it could go either way. But digital masters, people really invest in this and encourages their team to be agile, is set up for success. And that kind of maps over into, this is what a typical organization looks like there as well. So what we're trying to tell you here, some advice from me is that, set up an organization that is agile. Yeah? Do that. Try to get your people to do this. And then get yourself some really good tools so you can create these type of experiences and do it at scale everywhere. Manage these applications and maybe try to optimize them and personalize them more. All right? And if you do that, you're going to have really nice, pretty-looking mobile experiences, which is really critical. If you do that, and if you want to talk to me afterwards, I think mobile is the way. So if you haven't digitally transformed yet, or if you're trying to do that, mobile would be a great place to start. It leads to transformation because it breaks down silos usually within big organizations. And you put that at the heart of your business, like digital and mobile, and then you extend it out to the very edge of it. And if you do, I would argue that you're going to succeed in the digital age as well. So that's what Adobe does. The bottom stuff there, and the stuff my team does and helps most brands with. So that's all for me. Mark, yes, thank you. So that's Mark. Do you want? There you go. Thank you.